Is the Dirshu Mishnah Berurah Simin Yud Dalit Sif Dalit and Hey, as we're going to conclude Simin Yud Dalit today. Apologies on the lateness of the Shir, B'siyat D'Shmai going forth. We should be having all the Shirim up in timely fashion. But we begin the Machaber over here in Sif Dalit, continuing the halachas of making the bracha on the talis of your friend, you're borrowing your talis. What is the halacha? And this is really the second part of Simin Yud Daled. When we began Simin Yud Daled, we learned that Simin Yud Daled is dealing with Tzitzis made by a guy or a woman, and talis she'ula. And here are the halachas of a talis she'ula. So it says in the Machaber, Sif Daled, mutter lital talis chaveru levarich aleha. One is allowed to take his friend's talis and make a bracha on it, ubelvat, provided you got to put it back the way you found it. A very important rule. Even though there's a special allowance to borrow something for the sake of a mitzvah, you can't stop borrow your friend's item, but you always have to return it the way that you found it. Says the Rama, the same as by tefillin. If your friend doesn't let, you're not allowed to use his farm. Maybe you're going to rip it while you learn. Let's just see Sefei as well, and we'll take it all together. It says the Mechaber Sefei, Talis shal shutvin chayeves b'tzitzis l'chsev al kanfei vigdeim. Talis belong to shutvin, to partners, is obligated in tzitzis because it says al kanfei vigdeim. So it says the Mishnah Berurah Sefkatan Yud Gimel, dealing with borrowing the talis of your friend. Says the Mishnah Berurah, talis chaveiroi pirush shaloimi daitoi. You didn't ask him. So why are you allowed to do it? Usually we know shaul shaloimi das gazlin. You borrow something without permission, you're a gazlin. So why here is it allowed? One is happy for another to do a mitzvah with his money. V'davka, says Mishra Bakroi. This is only if it happens occasionally, not on a set basis. Aval b'kviis, to do this every single day, that is us. And continues the Mishnah Berurah. V'afilu b'akroi davka b'isemakan. You can't take it away. It has to be in that place. To take it to shul or a different location, that is forbidden. Sure. Why? Why is it forbidden? Listen to the reason. Maybe he is makbid, and therefore it's going to be considered gezela. Continues the Mishnah Berurah. You should always be careful if the owner is there to ask him. If you could easily ask, and this is important because often we see something, he'll be asking, it's for a mitzvah. Go ask him if he's right there. If you know that he's makbid, certainly you would have to ask him. So the Mishnah Berurah just taught us a bunch of very important rules, taught us the reason it's a mitzvah, he's happy if you do a mitzvah. It only is occasionally and not on a regular basis. And as well, you're not allowed to remove it from the place. And the Pri Megadim pointed out it's always better to ask. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Sefkatan Yadalid, you're allowed to even make a bracha on it. Ayin Magen Avram. He points it to the Magen Avram. Because of the Shaila, if you're allowed to make a bracha, says the Derech HaChaim, it's better to have das, to not be koinet, and then you get out of the Shaila and you won't make a bracha. And as well, we said you have to fold it. Shikabulay says Mishmur Sefkatan Tezvav. Kiki Pulo Arishan, the way it was originally folded. Ube Shabbos. On Shabbos, we know it's a big shayla, you're not allowed to fold a talis. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Yikabulay Saibaloi Kiki Pulo Arishan, which is one of the atirim of folding a Shabbos. You fold it off the creases, fold it backwards. As we'll see in a moment, that is what one would do on Shabbos. Says the Magen Avram, on Shabbos you have no choice, you don't have to fold it at all. And says Mishnah Berurah Sefkatan Tazayin, but you're not allowed to learn the sefer of your friends without his das. Even if it is occasionally. Why? Maybe you're going to learn a lot from it. And what's going to happen? It's going to rip due to the abundance of use. The Olam, the minhag is, if you see a sitter, you daven with it. It says Mishnah Berurah, a strong lashon. The Maishna Siddur Misvarim, and we'll see the Dirshu in a moment. But let's just conclude. Simin Yadalit and Sivkatan Yadzayin says Mishnah Berurah and Sivhei Shal Shutfei Matalos of Shutin requires Tzitzis V'tal Shal Shutin Nachri V'Yisrael. What if you own it with a guy? Oy Ish V'Isha Chayavis V'Tzitzis V'Yivarech Lev. Then you can't make a bracha. Artus L'Chayim D'Lokim Esikalezer Ayin Sham Chayavis. V'Ayri says Mishnah Berurah Sivkatan Yadchash Chavira Merutz Hashil Chavira Boy. Tzitzis. Chayev Lasais, then you're obligated to make on it. Chayev Lasais by Tzitzis. Avol Shotin Vish by Tzitzis. V'echad Makal Chaver Shloyelech by. If you have partners and there's Tzitzis, but one is Mak, but his friend doesn't go with it. Feel Yish Bagdei Chalaka B'chol Chelik Shir Talis Avilochi Yem Love Shei B'Gzela Muvarech Alav Ayver V'Loi Sisa. One could definitely be Ayver on such a lot. Why? What's the reason? Explains the Mishnah Berurah. The reason why one is over is because, again, this is Loisis Hashem Hashav, saying Hashem's name in vain. The reason is you don't own the whole talis. So part of it too, this is not yours. And certainly if it's not Tzitzis on it, let's say a father leaves over a talis, and the other brothers are particular that don't want to share it with one of the brothers. You can't make a bracha until you make a pshara, until you figure out the story. Says the Dirshu over here, note number 27. So Dirshu 27 over here points out that what is the reason you're allowed to use this tzitzis, this talis, because people are happy that you do a mitzvah with it. So Dirshu points out that even a woman, let's say it's a woman, a mitzvah she's not mechuyevin, says Ramesha, she's still allowed to use an item of a man without his knowledge, because it's still some level of a mitzvah even without a chiyuvis. And therefore we still have this chazaka. Again, maybe one example, no, let's leave it. What example is not so clear. And what about a kid? To use a kid's item without his knowledge for a mitzvah, says Ramesha as well, you're allowed to do that as well. Why? Because the katan is happy for you to use his item. The Dirshu note number 28 points out, you're only allowed to use it in that place. That comes from a bach. And over there, the Bach explains, you're allowed to put on your tefillin with your friend, as the Ramah said, also Bakrai, but every single day is forbidden. To take a lulav of your friend, we're going to see in Tafresh Memtes, says Mishnah Berurah B'Shin Pri Megadim, you're allowed to take it dafka only one time, but all 7 days. That's a level of kaviyas, and he is makbid on that. Let's say the talus is in a hidden place, it's away. Says the Aruch HaShulchan, then you're not allowed to take it anymore, unless you know for sure he's not makbid. So Aruch HaShulchan is limiting this halacha, that we're only going to have this allowance for a mitzvah if it's out. If it's in a public place, then you could use it. But if you put it away, says Aruch HaShulchan, it's not so simple. And says the Dirshu, continuing note number 29 over here, if you find the talus in shul, you're allowed to put it on. The reason is, what's the reason? Says Ramaish, even though normally we'll go after a raiv, because generally people are not makbid, and therefore you're allowed to wear it. We're running out of time. So let's continue. Dirshu number 30. Some very important dirshus over here. For regardless the halacha of gezel, says the Raman Chaysha Mishpat, you still can't take it out of shul. Why? Because that is of the takana koydamais not to do that. So we have to be careful. People borrow talisim, tefillin, etc. You have to use them in their place. And as we pointed out, just like you'd have to put back the talis the way you found it, certainly the tefillin, which we learned Hilchos Tefillin, we'll see as well, which is a bit more difficult sometimes. Because you want to adjust the tefillin, definitely something that one has to be careful about. Let's go to Dirshu number 34, in which the Dirshu points out what's the issue with folding up the talis. Quoting the Shulchan Aruch and Hilchos Shabbos, Simin Shin Beis, that you're not allowed to fold up a talis because mitake mana, you're smoothing it out, you're getting rid of the creases. But if you don't do it in the original fashion, that was the Mishnah Berurah over there, Sefkatan Yodeches, and Hilchos Shabbos says that's allowed because that doesn't have a kiyum to it, and therefore that's going to be allowed. Dirshu note number 35 is explaining the Magen Avram that says you don't have to fold it at all. The Machzor Shekel says the reason is because we have to be chayshish for other shita that you can't fold it at all. And number 36 will conclude with that the reason by the Svarim because in shir lalimud, and therefore it's also even ba'akrai, And now Dirshu number 37 says, what about a sitter that's in a public place? A real public place. So in such a case, Rosh Mizalman says, even if it says a name of a person, mistaver, a big chiddush, he allows you to daven on it, because the fact that it's over there, obviously everyone knows everyone's going to use it. And similarly, Sefer Din Van Hagais, that's where Moshe Sternbach says similarly that the Chazayin Ish, and we'll conclude with this, Hitler Lashevis al Kisois, that people leave in shul, they used to, I guess, bring their chairs to shul. Why? Because obviously people know they're going to sit on it, and we will pick up B'siyata Dishmaya from Siman Tens Vav in the next shiur.